Hello, and welcome back to Terri Reid's Attic, a place where we share stories of things that go bump in the night. Sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy the stories. Years ago, I used to write the Halloween feature stories for our local paper, the Freeport Journal-Standard. I remember pitching the idea to the editor. "John, I'd like to write a feature about ghosts in Freeport," I said, trying to sound confident even though I had no idea if there were ghosts in Freeport. John was very confident. "Terri, there are no ghost stories in Freeport," he said firmly. "Okay, if I find some, can I write the article?" I asked. He sighed and then nodded. "Yes, you find me some good ghost stories and I'll let you have the feature," he agreed. So I started asking everyone I knew and a bunch of people I didn't know if they had any ghost stories or knew of any ghost stories. I got a few crazy looks, but hey, that's the newspaper business. But I also got a bunch of great stories about people who were actually living with ghosts in their homes. I pitched the idea thinking that I'd find more legends like Resurrection Mary, a story from Chicago where I was raised. But no, these people in town had personal paranormal experiences that they wanted to share. After my first feature, I developed a little bit of a reputation, and people started telling me their stories. Remember when we started, we talked about people wanting to share stories with people who would believe them? Well, that's what happened. Then the local radio station invited me in on Halloween, and we would talk about ghosts. We'd also have people call in and share their stories. The following is one of my favorite stories from the call-in, and it sets up the theme for this episode: ghost children. The call came in during the break. A woman called and asked if she could share her story. She said that she lived in an older area of Freeport. She and her husband had purchased a huge home that was over 100 years old, and they were slowly remodeling it. The remodeling was slowed a little when their son was born, but slowly, room by room, they tried to continue. As her son got older, she found that he had some odd habits. He would laugh at something when he was alone in his room. He would look over her shoulder at an empty corner and wave. And when he started trying to talk, he would shout out, "Hi," when he was in his playpen in the living room and she was in the other room. Since this was her first child and she had no other children to measure his behavior against, she just thought that he had a great imagination. When he was 2, her parents offered to take him for the weekend so she and her husband could finish a major project in the house. Gratefully, she accepted. Her mother picked him up on Friday afternoon, and she quickly tidied up the house before her husband came home and they needed to start on the project. She cleaned her little boy's room, shelving all of his toys, making his bed, and putting his books up on the shelves. As she began to leave, she nearly tripped over a toy she'd missed during cleanup: his toy carousel, his favorite toy. The top of the toy had a button that you could push down, and then the carousel would spin around for a few moments. That toy seemed to always be on the floor, she thought, picking it up and storing it on the shelf with all the others. Then she looked around the room. It was all clean and tidy. Satisfied, she closed the door and moved on to the other areas of the house. When her husband got home, they worked together on their remodeling project until they were too tired to do any more. Collapsing on their bed, they both immediately fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, she awoke because she heard a noise from her son's room. With a foggy, half-asleep mind, she forgot he was staying with her parents, and she padded down the dark hallway to his door. She opened the door and flipped on the light. Toys were scattered all around the room. Books were on the floor, and the bed was unmade. She searched for her son and then remembered that he wasn't home. Remembered that she had cleaned the room. Then her eyes went to the middle of the room. There, sitting on the floor in the center of the room, was his little push carousel, and it was still spinning. I got chills. I hope you did too. So for this episode, I thought I'd find some stories about children who are ghosts, making noise, playing games, and causing mischief in their own unique ways. The first story is from Ghost City, a group of paranormal investigators from New Orleans. In this story, they're doing an investigation of the old Musée Conti Wax Museum. The museum had decided to close its doors, so they reached out to the general manager to see if they'd be interested in allowing the folks from Ghost City to do a paranormal investigation. This is what they found. On our private investigation, every single group encountered the ghosts of children. Whether it was the ghostly voices of children or even seeing small childlike shadow people, the ghosts of children seemed to be filling the museum on the night we were there. To be honest, it was a little unsettling. We were not even aware that the ghosts of children were haunting this French Quarter location. Aside from a few other voices, it seems as if all of our interactions were with the ghosts of children. The most interesting encounter happened upstairs near the ballroom. Gretchen and I were sitting in the hallway on a couch. There was a slight commotion in the hallway, the sounds of movement, and the shadow of a child appearing out of nowhere. Gretchen heard the movement, but did not see the shadow. I saw the shadow seemingly rise out of the floor. We looked at each other. I had thought that she had seen it also. She didn't. She was responding to the sound of movement. What makes this event much more interesting is that right before this happened, I recorded an EVP of a child responding to me. I had said, I cannot see you, but if you come up to me and talk, I can hear you. The voice responded, do you want to see me? To say that it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience would be pretty accurate. The Ghost City website also gave me a lead to where I might find some more children ghosts, the Andrew Jackson Hotel, also in New Orleans. They said the Andrew Jackson Hotel has perhaps the most famous stories about ghosts of children haunting it. A former boys' home in the early 1800s, the building which houses the Andrew Jackson has a long history of housing children. Our best guess is that the ghosts of these children can be traced back to its days as a boys' home. One of the stories that gets told about the Andrew Jackson Hotel is that the boys who haunt the hotel died in a fire. However, our researchers have not been able to find anything to suggest that this building actually burned down. As a matter of fact, we have found evidence that completely contradicts this claim. While staying at the Andrew Jackson Hotel, many guests have reported hearing children playing in the hallways and in their rooms. Of course, when they go to look, there are no children there. A few people have even seen the apparition of a young boy, which fits with what we know the history is. So, I went over to TripAdvisor to see what real guests said about their stays at the Andrew Jackson. Here are their reviews. When I made the reservation for my mom and I was not aware of its haunts. I chose it for its character and historic appeal. It was not until my first night when I heard the whispers in the walls and the pitter-patter of children's feet coming up the stairs. I was not afraid, but rather intrigued. So I went out and explored the rest of the hotel and took pictures of an orb. Yes, I had a sighting. But don't let this strike you with fear. All of my little ghosts were very friendly and playful. Just don't be too surprised when you wake up with the TV turned to Cartoon Network. Overall, this may not be a hotel for little ones because you may hear giggles that don't belong to them. But it is surely a place to stay in the French Quarter. The next review. Though I read the hotel was haunted, I did not experience anything out of the ordinary, with the exception of one night. I heard what sounded like people running up and down the hall outside my door. When I got up to look, no one was there. Next review. Let me start by saying I didn't believe in hauntings. We came to New Orleans for an overnight stay to meet family. How cool is it that the rooms with balconies have you walk out a window to get out there? While we were getting ready for a night on the French Quarter, they kept having ghost tours come by. I thought that was neat, but thought nothing else about it. We went out to Bourbon Street, had a great time, and came back about 2:30 to get into bed. As I started to doze off, we all, there were 4 in the room, heard a loud thud. I lay there for a second, thinking that was the room next door, but heard nothing else. Of course, that was a bit scary, but as we dozed off to sleep the next time, we heard metal being dragged beneath our bed. This time we got up, turned on the lights, and there was nothing remotely metal there. Thoroughly freaked out, I jumped back in bed with my roommate and began crying. It was like an episode of Scared Straight. We didn't end up sleeping until almost 5:30 in the morning. Our family across the hall heard voices and felt something running their fingers through their hair. This indeed made me believe in the hauntings for sure. Would also like to thank the staff, Troy, Jeffers, and the guy that was there during the day whose name I cannot remember, and the lady that brought around our breakfast. This was a stay we will never forget. Next review. Okay, now for the fun stuff. On the last morning of our stay, my husband got up early and went for a run. After he left, I fell back asleep. A short while later, I was woken up because I had the feeling that someone got into bed with me. I turned over to ask my husband how his run went, but I was alone. After my husband returned, we met up with friends who were also staying in the hotel and found out that they had a similar experience. Her husband got up to use the restroom. She felt someone get in her bed, but realized it wasn't him when he opened the bathroom door a short while later. So, is the hotel haunted? I don't know, but it's a great vacation story. Next review. The last night, dear husband was awakened by fingers jabbing into his back about 6 times, and it wasn't me. It took him a little while to settle down after that. Glad he didn't wake me up. Once, when I was sharing ghost stories and offering a chance for others to share their own experiences, a middle-aged man stood up. He said that he and his wife had triplets, but one of the babies, a little girl, died soon after her birth. They named her Angelica because they knew she was their angel. The other 2, a boy and a girl, were very healthy and survived. Years later, when the other 2 children were about 6 years old, the man said he was sitting in his living room watching television. It was later in the evening, and the children should have been in bed. He glanced up the stairs and saw his daughter standing at the top of the stairs. "Go to bed, Chrissy," he told her. "Go to bed now." She stared at him for a long time, then finally turned and walked back down the hallway. He waited for a few minutes and decided that he wasn't convinced that she was actually going to bed. So he went upstairs to check on her, and sure enough, Chrissy was not in her bed. He went down the hall to where his wife was in their bedroom. He opened the door and asked her if she'd seen Chrissy. "Yes, she's in here," she replied. He sighed. "I told her to go back to her own room," he said. She looked puzzled. "When?" she asked. "About 5 minutes ago," he replied. She shook her head. "Nope, she's been in here asleep for at least an hour." The next morning, when they were at the breakfast table, their son came into the room looking rumpled and sleepy. He slid onto a chair and turned to his sister. "What were you doing last night?" he grumbled. "What?" she asked. "Last night," he repeated. "You just stood at the end of my bed and stared at me. It was weird." Weird indeed. Thank you for stopping by Terri Reid's Attic. If you enjoyed the stories, please click like and please subscribe. And please look below for links and more videos. Until next time, from ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, dear Lord, protect us.